Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Comprehensive D&D 5e Guides. Now, I know that's a mouthful, but I really like doing this show. It's a lot of fun, and a lot of people have really enjoyed it so far, so we are going to continue with the Player's Handbook Subclasses of the Rogue. If you watched my last comprehensive D&D 5e guides video, I talked about the Rogue and talked about kind of the purpose behind the class, the mechanics behind the class, how it was really designed to be played. And then talked about the different abilities and how they fit into that design idea of what the class was meant to do. And I mentioned that the subclasses, which are called archetypes, if I remember correctly. Roguish archetypes. The subclasses further kind of define the core aspects of the rogue. Now, just to remind you what the kind of defining features of the rogue are, they are expertise. The rogue and the bard both get expertise, but the rogue gets more expertise than the bard. They get eventually 4 different skills that they can use their expertise in, where the bard only gets 2. But that's a defining feature of the rogue, is that they have 4 skills. By level 6, they have 4 skills they are massively good at. So we have expertise, we have sneak attack. They do lots of damage, and they don't have to have multiple attacks to do it with. They stab you once, and you remember. So sneak attack. You have Thieves' Cant, which really isn't going to be, like I said, even the book never really mentions it again, despite the fact it being one of the coolest abilities I think they have. So the archetypes are not going to deal with Thieves' Cant whatsoever. However, each one of the archetypes has an aspect of Thieves' Cant they can use extremely effectively. And then the final kind of defining feature for the rogue is the cunning action. Cunning action is a thing that lets them use their bonus action to either dash, disengage, or hide. Each archetype will have things that further kind of solidify and change how those defining features are used. For the most part, 2 of the archetypes are going to give you new ways to use your cunning action and really, really change how the character is played because of that. And the third one is going to make your sneak attack crazy. If you had to take a guess between the thief, the arcane trickster, or the assassin, I think you can figure out which one improves sneak attack super, super crazy high. But we'll get to that in a second. The other thing is every single one of these archetypes, again, the rogue is the min-maxer's class of choice. It's a very, very easy class to min-max. There are a lot of things that that gel well with things like sneak attack and with high stealth scores and attacking from while you're hidden, stuff like that. There are a lot of things that really, really complement the thief's skill set through multi-classing, through using feats, things like that. Again, I don't think I have seen a 5e min-maxer that doesn't have at least a level of rogue. Because that sneak attack, even 1d6, is a crazy, crazy thing. So anyway, this is the min-maxer's class of choice in 5e. One of the archetypes is going to be the Min-Maxer's archetype of choice because, again, it's a very, very simple, easy thing to do, and it's very easy to abuse. And I'm actually going to spend, because the only thing that Min-Maxers will worry about is the first and the last of the 4 archetype abilities you get from that archetype, and they will completely ignore the other 2. And so I'm actually going to focus specifically on the other 2 a lot more to show people that aren't just doing it for the mechanical benefits, that want to have a really interesting character. Exactly how this class really, really falls into the rogue class itself, how the archetype fits into the rogue class itself and really complements the rogue and what it's designed to be, which is, that character that's the guy that gets things done. That's what the rogue is at the end of the day, is the guy that gets things done. That's why they have expertise. They're the guy that gets things done. That's why they have the ability to open locks and use thieves tools and stuff like that. That's why they will get other abilities as well that just really make them very, very useful. So without any further ado, let's start with the first archetype, and this is the one I see the least number of people taking. I think because it seems really underwhelming. Mostly because when you look at the Thief compared to the Arcane Trickster or the Assassin gets auto crits and gets double damage and all this other crazy, crazy stuff. And the Arcane Trickster gets magic. And there's so many things you can do, especially with some of the later books. There's so many things you can do with magic that make rogues in general just massively useful. And the Thief doesn't. The Thief gets some expanded use of their cunning action, which is incredibly useful. And then they get things that, let them climb faster, which is a strength-based thing, and not a whole lot of thieves take a lot in strength. And they get a couple other things, and it doesn't make a ton of sense to people. Again, when you're looking at it from that min-maxer perspective, it seems very, very underwhelming. When you actually look at what the Thief archetype is supposed to be, I think it really encapsulates the Rogue archetype perfectly. I think it's a brilliant way to... I think the Thief itself is a brilliant way to really, really emphasize what it means to be a rogue. What it means to be that kind of sneaky person that gets things done. So, third level, your cunning action gets improved. You can now use your cunning action to make a sleight of hand check. Use your Thieves tool to disarm a trap or open a lock, or take the use an object action. Now, that sounds kind of underwhelming. Like, again, the basic thing the basic thing that most rogues will do in combat is run up, stabby stab, and then either use your bonus action to your cunning action to disengage, so you can run back away and not get hit. Or if you're a ranged rogue, you peek out, shooty shoot, and then use your cunning action to hide. That is the that is the basic, this is how I play my rogue for most people. That's what they do every round of combat. And it actually gets a little bit boring because they just do the same damn thing over and over and over again. This changes things massively. So let's first talk about the things that you can do. First, dexterity sleight of hand check. Sleight of hand is generally used to pickpocket or do something with your hands that you don't want people to see. And in combat, that can take a lot of different angles. So again, normally you don't see people using sleight of hand checks because that would take an action. And rogue action, the action is very important because that's what they use to get their sneak attack. They need that action. So you're not going to see them using a sleight of hand check when they can stab someone and do 12d6 damage or something like that. I actually can't remember what they max out at. I'll tell you in a second here. Yeah, at 19th level, they get 10d6 plus whatever their weapon is. So not 12d6, it's only 10d6. But still, it's a lot of damage. And then if you crit on that, it's 20d6, guys. It's 20d6. It's crazy. Even if you just take average rolls, the average roll in d6 is a 4. 4 times 20 is 80 damage. Plus your weapon and dex mod in a single attack. It's a lot of damage. So anyway, yeah, they don't want to use their action to... they don't want to use it to do anything other than their attack, because they only get one attack, and it's massively useful. So their bonus action, they're not going to use the sleight of hand. But different things you can do with a sleight of hand check in the middle of battle. You can sleight of hand something off the person that you're fighting. If you're in a campaign where you're fighting humanoids on a fairly regular basis, the ability to take something off of them without them noticing is massively useful. Now, it depends on what your DM is going to rule. Generally, I'm going to say, like if I'm a DM, generally, and I think most will agree with me, I'm going to say like disarming someone is not a sleight of hand action. They have a disarm ability. It's a fighter, Battlemaster fighter maneuver. You can disarm someone. So letting a rogue do that with a sleight of hand would be taking away from something very specific that a fighter can do, or you can take as a feat if you get the, I think, martial something feat. It gives you Battlemaster maneuvers. It's never going to be something you can go, ha, I have your sword. I've just taken away their sword. However, you can take other things from them. It could be that you're trying to sneak into a castle or something like that. You get into combat. You don't really have the time. And this is something that I say to Dungeon Masters on a fairly regular basis when they start running high-level parties. And it's something I learned in 4th edition, because in 4th edition... you can't kill high-level parties. You simply can't. You will never get a TPK. By level, I think it's either 21 or 23, and 4th edition goes up to level 30. Every class gets what I call a get-out-of-death-free ability, where when they're reduced to 0 hit points, something happens and they're at max hit points again. Generally, they can only do that once a day, but that's still... I mean, how many times are you going to be able to kill off a really high-level character? It's just not happening. You can't kill off high-level party members. And the same thing is true in 5th edition. Even when you're throwing ancient red dragons and things like that, it is remarkably difficult to kill off high-level parties. So... something that when you're thinking about encounter design, you need to have a success condition and a failure condition. The success condition could be success and failure could be as simple as success is you kill all the bad guys, failure is the bad guys kill all of you. It's a very basic idea of success versus failure in a combat encounter. When you're not in a combat encounter, let's say you're in a trap encounter where they trigger a trap. Success for that is they disarm the trap and get out of the room. Failure, again, could be just as simple as, the ceiling goes down and squishes them all, or the gas gets so toxic that they all die. This is what most people think of when they think success versus failure in any sort of encounter. Failure is always death. Now again, as the party gets higher and higher in level, death becomes less of an issue. Once they start getting things like Revivify, Revive, Reincarnate, and then when they start getting the really big things like True Resurrection, they don't even need a body. They just get the person back. Killing off a player or killing off an entire party is remarkably difficult at high levels. So one of the things that I tell Dungeon Masters is you cannot always have that the lose condition, the failure condition, is the party dies. Because that is making the failure condition far too difficult to achieve. The failure condition should always be something that is possible to happen. If the failure condition is so minute a chance that it will happen, then there's no real reason for the players to be invested in the encounter. If they can't fail, then the encounter doesn't matter. So the failure condition can't always be the player's death. And when you get to the high levels, it generally isn't going to be the player's death. And that's where this ability comes in. I constantly urge even Dungeon Masters playing with low-level parties, give them failure conditions that have nothing to do with the players dying. First of all, low-level 5e parties are not difficult to kill. You could accidentally kill them. It's not that hard. You don't need to also be stacking the battles and things like that. So every single combat encounter they have, they're afraid that they're going to die and they're going to lose this character and have to roll a brand new character. Especially since at low levels they can't really resurrect other party members because they don't have the money for it. Things like that. So, yeah, I constantly urge Dungeon Masters, make failure conditions that have nothing to do with the players dying. Make a failure condition that somebody else dies. Make a hostage situation where they have to sneak into a building, and if they don't get to the hostages fast enough or they make too much noise getting to the hostages die. They are perfectly fine, but their characters have to deal with the fact, and the players themselves have to deal with the fact that because of their actions, people are dead. Make the lose condition that they've been chasing this big baddie, for 6 sessions, and they're finally to where they can get him, but if they don't get to him fast enough, he's going to get away, and they may never be able to catch him again. This is the only time they're guaranteed to know where he is, he or she, or they, or whatever. Make the lose condition not that, oh, you die, it's you lose your only chance of stopping this person who is going to go on and do more horrible things. Things like that. Death becomes a very boring motivator. I don't want to die becomes a very boring motivator after a while. And that's where this sleight of hand thing, I know this is a really long explanation, but that's where this sleight of hand thing comes from. Because let's say you are in a time-sensitive situation. And in time-sensitive situations, I've played a number of dungeons that were pre-written and use this, and I've created my own dungeons that specifically will use this. If there is a time limit on something, adding encounters to it, the encounters are never there to kill the party. The encounters are there to waste the party's time. So, because again, the failure condition is not that they all die, is that they don't do it fast enough. So with this sleight of hand check, a very, very simple encounter is to waste a party's time so that they can't get to where they're supposed to be going, is to have a locked door and a really, really tough dude with the key. It will take them a long time to whittle the dude down, and it will waste time that they don't have unless they have a thief in the party. The thief can use their action to stabby stab anybody, because rarely are you going to have just one person there. No, you're going to have him with a bunch of minions, and they're all going to be attacking. They're going to be gumming up the party, making it really difficult for the party to move forward. And the rogue's just going to go up, stabby stab somebody, use their bonus action to pickpocket, the key off of the big baddie, which is a normal use of sleight of hand, and then is going to run up to the door. You get a free interaction with an object as part of your movement, unlock the door, run through, and then all your party members can run through on the next turn, and you close the door behind you. And if you lock it, you have the key. They can't get through. And there's a lot of other variations on that. It could be that you've gone into a place where there is a, an animal tamer or something like that, and it's got... Tyranny of Dragons did this a lot, where they would have these kind of dragon dog things that the Cult of the Dragon had, and they'd have a dragon tamer that would keep them, and they keep them in pens. The dragon tamer would always have a key to the pen, so you could unlock them and unleash these things. With a thief, you could take the key off of the guy so he can't unlock the pens. Again, another different way to use the exact same ability. So that sleight of hand can be very, very useful. The other thing that I think can be equally, let's call it interesting, is putting something on them that they don't want on them. I've seen Viari from Acquisitions Incorporated did this once, and I think it's a brilliant move and a brilliant use of sleight of hand, simply because it's just such an interesting thing. He had a vial of Alchemist's Fire. Instead of throwing it in an attempt to cover the person and make them, immolated, he simply placed it into their pack, so that the next attack that hit them, that hit that pack, would unleash the Alchemist's Fire just because. And I think that's really, really brilliant. Stowing something on a bad guy instead of taking something with sleight of hand is brilliant. If you are doing a political intrigue type thing, you could plant incriminating evidence on a bad guy or a good guy if you're playing a bad party, whatever. Then in the middle of the fight, the guards get in, you're going to be surrounded by guards. You can go, no, look, he's the bad guy. Look in his pack. Tell him to open up his pack. If he's got nothing to hide, if he's not a traitor, then tell him to open his pack. The person, thinking there's nothing in there, opens his pack. The incriminating evidence is there, and he gets cordoned off to jail. All of these are really, really interesting, effective uses of sleight of hand that doesn't take your action, that allows you to do other things. Again, it's something that I think is overlooked a lot, and I think can be very, very cool. The other things that you get: use your Thief's Tools to disarm a trap or open lock. The same basic thing as before. Instead of swiping the key off the guard, you could just run up to the door and bonus action unlock it, open it. Everybody goes through, close it, Thief's Tool, lock it shut. Easy peasy. So that's that. Then the other thing is something that people don't think about, and it's massive. And it gels really, really well. It complements the 13th level ability I'll talk about in a second here. But what it is it lets you take the use an object action. A lot of people don't know what the use an object action is. And even myself, before making this video, I wasn't 100% sure what it meant. So I actually went and I looked it up. In the PHB, it says the use an object action is any time you have an object that says you have to use an action to do something, you are using the use an object action. That means things like staves that have charges, like the Staff of the Magi says you can use an action to cast a spell. Or rather, you can use an action to expend a certain number of charges to cast a spell. So that means if you've got a wand of magic missiles, it will say you can use an action to expend so many charges to cast magic missile, blah, blah. A thief can do that as a bonus action. as long as it doesn't specifically say, or as long as it uses the words, as long as the magic item uses the words, you can use an action to. A thief can do it as a bonus action. This makes the thief unbelievably useful for a magic item heavy party. For people that want to run that kind of Diablo style game where you're just getting constant magic items and stuff like that, there are people that enjoy that style of gameplay. 5e isn't really designed for that, but you can adjust it so that you can have that. Or even if you're just doing like kind of the regular 5e experience where you don't really tend to get a ton of magic items, the thief can use a lot of them as bonus actions and still get their sneak attack in, or whatever else they want to use their action for. Like, they become super useful once you start getting magic items, just because of that use an object. And I'm going to talk about something a little bit later that the thief gets that makes them invaluable because of that. Because their cunning action, they can use items, and their 13th level ability is amazing. So that's called Fast Hands. When you get the other thing you get at 3rd level is you can climb faster than normal. You can climb normally. If you climb, you have to make a strength athletics check, and you move at half speed. Rogues don't. You still have to make a strength athletics check. It's generally, depending on what you're climbing, not an incredibly difficult thing. If you have a climbing kit, I can't remember if I have it in front of me, but it required me looking. You either get advantage on it or you just succeed. So if you're a thief, get a climbing kit. They're extremely useful. But you move at normal speed. This means the thief can get places most people can't. Super useful for sneaking into buildings. Most places will lock the bottom doors that anyone can get into. Not a whole lot of places will lock the 3rd story window. They're not really thinking someone's going to climb 3 stories to sneak into the building. And other things like that. You know, if there's a very big wall around an estate, a thief is going to have very little issue getting over it. And in combat, where movement is going to matter, being able to get to a high spot that your allies can't can mean the difference between, again, that failure or success consequence. If the success option is not that you have to kill something, but you have to get to something before a certain time, and you have all of these bad guys and there's only one way up, there's like a set of stairs to a pedestal, and you have to get to the gem on top of the pedestal before the ritual is complete. Everyone else, you know, the bad guys all swarm up around the stairs and make it impossible for anyone to get through. The rogue goes around the side, climbs up. Really useful. I play a monk. They get the ability to basically run up walls. The ability to go vertical where other people don't is massively useful, and it changes the way that you play the game. And it also forces your DM to think 3-dimensionally about combat, and the rest of your party as well to think in 3 dimensions instead of just 2. And it adds a lot of fun. So that's 2nd story work. The other thing you get is if you make a running jump, you get to add your dexterity modifier, or your dexterity score. So if it's a 16, you add 16 feet to your long jump distance. So not only can you climb really high, as long as you get a 10-foot head start, you can jump really far. So again, the thief is that guy that climbs up into the trees and jumps between branches and then just hops down when they have something useful to do, like killing someone with a sneak attack. It's really cool, really interesting, and again, something that a lot of people don't think about because they think of, well, climbing is a strength athletics thing, thieves don't use strength. Well, you can, and if you get trained in expertise in athletics, you do super well even if you only have a 10 in your strength. Because again, climbing, generally they're not going to make super high DCs compared to other things like controlling someone's mind. So yeah, just an expertise in that for the thief can mean that your thief is a 3-dimensional thief while the rest of your party is having to stick to 2 dimensions. So that's really cool. Ninth level, this is the other thing about thieves. They're super sneaky. Ninth level, you get advantage on any stealth roll that you make as long as you only move half your speed. So in combat, that basically means you can move and still stay hidden and things like that without having to worry about super observant people noticing that you're there. This to me is a little bit more useful out of combat, where you're sneaking around and you're kind of scouting ahead for your party. As long as you're moving slowly, you have advantage on all your stealth checks. Normally that requires a magic item, a spell being cast, something like that. You just get it by doing it slow. So again, something that feeds into, especially when you have expertise in stealth, something that feeds into that expertise. Thieves or rogues are really good at performing certain skill checks. That's what this is. It makes you even better at being super sneaky. 13th is that thing that really, really gels well with that use magic item fast hands thing from 3rd level. 13th level, you get use magic device. You have learned enough about the workings of magic that you can improvise the use of items even they're not intended for you. You ignore all class, race, and level requirements on the use of magic items. This means thieves can use any magic item, and some of the most powerful magic items are reserved for reserved for wizards, sorcerers, or warlocks. Things like the Staff of the Magi let you cast super powerful spells, but you have to be I think you have to be a wizard for that one. And there's other things, like there are bard instruments that let you cast really, really cool spells. And again, they all have that you can use an action to cast this spell. So the rogue can do it as a bonus action. Now, the one kind of caveat to that is casting spells specifically says if you use a bonus action to cast a spell, you cannot cast any other spells in that round unless it is a cantrip. So for rogues, that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to double cast Fireball with a wand of Fireball. Technically, because it says you cast a spell and you used your bonus action to cast the spell because of your cunning action, most DMs are going to rule that no, you can't do that. And I believe that is the way that it was intended. It doesn't mean that you are just casting fireballs and magic missiles left and right. What it does mean is you can cast a fireball, then run in and sneak attack them to finish them off. Or quite a few other things. There are quite a few magic items that are limited. In the Adventurers League, there's an oath bow that you have to have a level of ranger in order to attune to, unless you're a thief. And the oath bow has this really cool thing where you designate a target as the target of your enmity or something like that. And you do extra damage to them, and then you combine that with sneak attack, and then you combine that with a crit, and you suddenly have a rogue that's doing like 30 d6 damage in a single attack because they crit, and then they also have the oath bow, and then they and they have sneak attack and all that. So really, 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 really useful. And again, it gels so well with that fast hands from level 3. It turns the thief into an incredibly useful class. And again, a lot of min-maxers just ignore the thief. They go straight for the assassin, and this has so many min-maxing aspects to it that you could turn them extremely deadly. So anyway, that is one of the coolest things that they get, that use magic device, and that's actually a callback to earlier editions of D&D where rogues could actually, I think it was 3rd edition and 2nd edition, they could actually roll to make a check to see if they could use like wands and spell scrolls and things like that. Things they normally couldn't use, they can use. So this just kind of harkens back to the more classic version of rogues, where they could use any magic item. Sometimes they'd have to make a roll for it, but if they'd trained enough in it, they could use all these things they normally shouldn't be able to. That's where that comes from. Then the final thing is Thief's Reflexes. This is crazy. This is super, super useful. What it is at 17th level, you can take 2 turns during the first round of any combat, as long as you're not surprised. Oh boy. The first turn is at your initiative, second turn is at your initiative minus 10. It still means you get 2 turns. Now, I've talked about, again, the action economy and how monks are really good at manipulating this. This is pure action economy manipulation. It is basically like, for a round, you have an extra character. An extra character that can sneak attack and use, like, magic wands on the same turn. So for that round of combat, you can sneak attack twice. You can cast 2 spells from wands or staves or anything like that using your bonus action. You are an amazing thing. And then you can just scramble up a wall to get out of any danger. Really, really cool. So that's the Thief. Again, the Thief really really focuses on that. The cunning action is really important to the Thief, and they use it really, really effectively. The cunning action will be used in more variety of ways by a Thief than any other archetype. And then, again, their expertise is specifically built for stealth and stealing things. And then that extra action to be able to use any magic item is just is beautiful. So yeah, that brings us to the Assassin. The Assassin. Just let that just kind of wash over you. The Assassin. The Assassin is exactly what it sounds like. They kill people. Now, again, this is the min-maxer's class of choice and archetype of choice because it's super easy to do, and most of them will either purposefully misunderstand the wording of the first ability on here, or will or just don't understand how it works because they want to do crazy tons of damage. So let's talk about what they get. First, they get some bonus proficiencies. They get proficiencies with the Disguise Kit and the Poisoner's Kit. Min-maxers don't care about that. They completely ignore that. This is such an assassin thing to do. If you look at actual assassins in history, they are not Assassin's Creed type characters where they come down, shunk. Assassins were masters of stealth. When you think of things like this is one of my favorite examples, the ninja. First of all, if anyone tells you, oh, I know ninjutsu, they're lying. Ninjutsu is a job. It's not a martial art. There are martial arts that claim to be ninjutsu, and what they are is they've just taken, because ninjas in general were trained in various martial arts to be able to do what they did best, which was being spies, and sometimes assassins. Ninjutsu is not a real martial arts style. It is a job. Being a ninja is a job. Ninjutsu is a job. And when we think of ninjas, when we think of the mask and the hood and everything like that, do you know where that comes from? It comes from Japanese theater. Stage hands would dress in all black with masks and everything like that. And that was visual shorthand to the audience that they were supposed to ignore those people, that they didn't technically exist on stage. So what they would do is you would see these people in all black walk on stage and they would move props off, or they would come on stage and if a prop needed to be levitated or something like that, that's what these people would do. That tradition is actually still alive and well today in the stage community. The tech people and the stagehands and things like that I've been a stagehand before. You are told get black everything. They do not want a speck of white on you whatsoever because it will show up. And the audience will be able to see it. Even in the low light of the theater, white glows. It always does. So they wear all black and they go on and they change the scenes and stuff like that. That's where we get our westernized version and the thought of what a ninja looks like. Because ninjas used to use things like, you know how Abraham Lincoln got assassinated at a theater? Yeah, it's actually not an uncommon thing for assassins to use something like a theater or public performance or something like that they know their target is going to be at to assassinate them. You know, samurai and you know, shogun and figures would every so often be invited to be a part of the performance as a way to, you know, kind of, you know, acknowledge how awesome they are. And so a ninja that was trying to assassinate a lord, if he came on, you know, wearing that traditional ninja garb we think of, no one would look at him. They would completely, they were taught that in theater, they weren't supposed to look at them. The reason I'm telling you this is actual ninjas very rarely use that garb. Unless they were assassinating someone that was in a play, they very rarely use that garb. You couldn't spot a ninja by them wearing this and they'd have a sword on their back. No, they dressed in whatever got them close enough to their target to do what they were supposed to do. They used a lot of poisons because poison is a significantly more useful way to kill someone than doing it yourself. Mostly because you can poison something and then run away. And by the time people realize that there's something wrong, you are far enough away that they can't hurt you. So they're very, very, they use poisons a lot. They used any disguise they possibly could. There were some ninjas that would dress, you know, men that would dress as women because, again, women were second-class citizens and, you know, you didn't really look at them or pay attention to them at that particular point in history. You know, things like that. That means these bonus proficiencies of Disguise Kit and Poisoner's Kit is so in line with an assassin. And it's not just ninjas. Assassins around the world. Assassination, not a new thing. It's been it's been around for a very, very long time. The biggest issues you're ever going to have being an assassin is in order to assassinate someone, you have to have access to them. You have to have some way to do that. Now, nowadays, you have, you know, the ability to just wait for them to get into a public space and then use some sort of ranged weapon to attack them. But even that comes with issues because you have to get the ranged weapon to a place where you can actually use it and blah, blah, blah. Assassination is very difficult. So getting to the target is very important. A disguise kit makes that significantly easier. If you can blend in, if you can make yourself part of their entourage, you get access to the target and can complete your mission, which is to kill them. And the Poisoner's Kit, again, another thing that's massively useful. Even if the assassin's goal is not to kill, but is simply to kidnap. They have things like drow poison, there's a couple other poisons in the Dungeon Masters Guild that are not Guild, Dungeon Masters Guide, that are ingestible that actually just render you unconscious. Using a Poisoner's Kit, poisoning you know, someone that you need to kidnap makes them significantly easier to kidnap. They don't make any sound, and you can just, you know, firemen carry them and get them out of there. So yes, those are very, very important to the assassin. Again, min-maxers generally don't care about that. They only care about this next thing. Starting at 3rd level, you are deadliest when you get the drop on your enemies. You advantage on attack rolls against any creature that hasn't taken its turn in the combat yet. That is not the thing that's misunderstood, either purposefully or on accident by min-maxers. It's this next part that is. In addition, any hit you score against a creature that is surprised is a critical hit. Okay. Most min-maxers will take that to mean if I have advantage, they're surprised. They'll go, well, are they surprised? I was hidden, so they must be surprised. No, in 5th edition, surprised is actually a unique condition, like being paralyzed or being poisoned or something. Surprised is a condition. It's not, oops, it's not pop goes the weasel. Surprise is a condition, and it generally requires you to ambush someone, for them to be completely unaware that you are attacking them. You don't get surprise from being hidden when you attack. You get advantage if you are hidden from them when you attack them. You do not get surprise. If they see a bunch of other people pulling swords and getting ready to kill them, they are not surprised anymore. They may not see you, which is why you get the sneak attack damage, because they are a little bit shocked that they got stabbed in the back and you hit somewhere really vital. And generally the reason that you get sneak attack on advantage, generally it's because sneak attack basically means you're hitting somewhere vital. It doesn't mean that they're surprised by it. It means you're hitting somewhere vital. And the reason you get advantage is in combat, you're going to be protecting your vital organs. If you don't know where one of your opponents is, you can't protect your vital organs. You can't protect your vital points from them. That's actually why you get advantage on attacks from cover. And that's why you get sneak attack from that as well. Is that they are simply not protecting themselves from you because they don't see you as a threat. You are not surprising them. Surprise is incredibly rare to happen. It only happens if you ambush them, and that takes a lot of work. So that's the auto crit that assassins get. And I have seen min-maxers just go to town on DMs going, no, no, no. He's surprised it's an auto crit. It's not. It's very rarely an auto crit. That part of it you are almost never going to use. Just accept it. It's a little bonus if you're super, super sneaky. That is all it is. If you do pull a full-on Ezio, flying from, 30 stories up to stab them, I will give you the auto crit then, and only then. So yeah, that is the one that annoys me the most. The next two abilities, again, min-maxers don't care about. These are essential for actual assassins. Again, if you look at real assassins, this is an essential thing. The first thing, infiltration expertise. They get at level 9. Basically, you get to create a false identity. It takes you a week and 25 gold, which is not a lot at level 9. 25 gold is not much at all once you get to level 9. And it doesn't specifically say that you have a limitation to how many identities you have. Your limitation is each one's going to take a week and 25 gold to make. And a week is a lot of time. When you look at Critical Role, the fact that their entire campaign from level 1 when they were playing at home all the way to level, I think they got to 18 or 19 by the time they ended the campaign and had their final climactic battle. They were adventuring, if I remember correctly, they were adventuring for like a year and 6 or 9 months, somewhere between 6 and 9 months. And a year of that was a time skip. And then there was another time skip in there somewhere. So the actual gameplay took place over less than a year. And that was an entire 5-year campaign. So 7 days is a fairly large investment. So assassins are not going to sit there and have 27 identities. However, if you look at something like Black Widow or Jason Bourne or one of my favorite television shows of all time was Burn Notice. Michael Weston had all these different identities. It is a common thing for spies to have multiple identities and things like that they can just pull out whenever they need. That is exactly what infiltration expertise is. It's when you need an identity that helps you get somewhere you normally can't. It pays to have an alternate an alternate identity that you are a very rich person, so you can get into places where they don't allow the riffraff. It is also just as equally useful to have an alternate identity where you're a street urchin and people know you. The thing about this is not just a costume. This is a full-blown identity. People know you as this person, and they have no reason to doubt that you are this person unless you give them. It specifically says in there, thereafter, if you adopt the new identity as a disguise, other creatures believe you to be that person until given an obvious reason not to. This is a massively useful thing for an assassin. This, again, lets you get access to targets you normally wouldn't. You create an identity that you are a mercenary for hire that guards important people. You create an identity that not only do you guard important people, you are one of the best. You know, you build that identity up. It's actually not an incredibly difficult thing to do. That means if your target is someone that is really, really important, you can simply slip into this identity and go, hey, have your party set up a situation where the guards are made to look like fools. You walk in, beat the snot out of a couple of your party members, and go, hey, here's my card. You guys aren't cutting it. I can totally protect you. And then they take you into their inner circle, and when they least expect it, you kill them and get away scot-free. And again, a lot of people are thinking, well, why don't you just kill him right there? Again, there are massive benefits to the idea of having an alibi when you're killing someone, or the ability to kill them where no one else will find the body for a very long time so that you're a very long ways away. Just tons of stuff. So that's really, really useful. Again, min-maxers don't give a shit about it because it doesn't give them extra damage. But again, it's a massively cool thing, and it's a very assassin thing to do. From classic, if you look at historical assassins, this is something that they did. This is what modern-day assassins do. In modern-day spies, they have multiple identities and stuff like that so that they can get places that they need to, and they can escape places that they don't want to be very quickly. The next one goes right along the same line. It's called Imposter. You gain the ability to unerringly mimic another person's speech, writing, and behavior. It takes you 3 hours of studying them in order to do that, but when you combine that with that infiltration expertise, what you do is you introduce someone that you need to be able to impersonate them, maybe as part of a bank heist, maybe as a way to get to another target that you need to assassinate. You're going to basically become friends with their best friend. You spend 3 hours with them because you're a merchant. You have a merchant identity, and you spend 3 hours with them talking about the boat you're going to build them. You get them to write some stuff down for you, sign some papers. So you get their handwriting down, their speech, their pattern. And what that means is your ruse is indiscernible to the casual observer. If a wary creature suspects something is amiss, you have advantage on any charisma deception checks you make to avoid detection. So, again, we're going to go back to what is it that the rogue does. Expertise is one of those defining features of the rogue. They're really, really good at doing certain things. This gives you even more ability. This is a class where you want to have deception as one of your expertise. You want to have deception because this gives you advantage on deception checks when you're impersonating a real person. The thing with the infiltration expertise is you can't take the identity of someone that's already around. You have to create a new identity. The infiltration, or with imposter, you get to take over somebody else's identity, which is significantly easier to do because they already exist. You're great with a disguise kit, and you can use them to frame them for the murder that you are about to commit because you are an assassin. Again, this is very, very assassin behavior that min-maxers won't care about because they're just like, oh, I want to stab and kill the people. But it's such a cool aspect and defining feature of a rogue. It fits into what the rogue does. And then the final thing is Death Strike. Again, min-maxer's paradise, but it's a massively cool thing, even if you're not a min-maxer. The basics of it are, When you attack attack and hit a creature that is surprised, again, it has to be surprised. Surprised is a condition. It is not you attack from hiding. You need to ambush them. Though, again, with your imposter and infiltration expertise, there is a much, much better chance that you're going to be surprised. You're going to be able to surprise. A person is not going to expect their best friend to stab them. So I would say if you were mimicking their best friend and they hadn't figured you out, and you just make an attack, I would say that the character is surprised, and that's when this happens. They have to make a Constitution saving throw against your DC is 8 plus your Dex mod plus your proficiency bonus, which is 17. I believe is plus 5. So this is a relatively high. Constitution is not something that there are a lot of creatures that have a super high Constitution save. It's just not something that a ton of creatures have. So Dexterity is your bread and butter. You probably already have it at 20 by now. So your bare minimum, you're looking at 5 plus 5 is 10. You're looking at a DC 18. You might have it even higher if you have other things going for you, like you've read one of the books that increases your ability score beyond 20 or something like that. But anyways, so what it means is on a failed save, double the damage your attack against that creature. Now, when you think back to the fact that if you attack a surprise creature and you hit, it's an instant crit. Now you're going to double the damage. So again, when we look at 17th level, I believe it's only 96. Yeah, 17th level, it's only 96. But let's take it up to 10d6 because it's easier math for me. 10d6 average roll on a d6 is 4. So 10d6 is 40. Double that to 80 plus your weapon attack. You are golden. Like, this is an insta-kill type thing. And that's really, I think what it was designed to be, is this is designed to be that assassin that just goes up to someone and shit, and they're done. End of story. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. You are dead. That's what this is designed to be, is you're now that ultimate assassin, that Ezio Assassin's Creed style assassin that you jump down, you stab them once, say something in Latin and walk away. That's what this is designed to do. And that means assassins do a lot of damage. However, 2 of their 4 abilities require them to have surprise. You can only have surprise once in any combat. And again, it takes a lot of effort. It's not something you're going to get in every single combat. So as much as this is the min-maxer's archetype of choice, because if you misread and misunderstand what surprise is, then they think they always auto-crit and they always do double damage. When you get that out of your head, oh, I forgot, 10d6 turns into 20d6. With an auto crit. So yeah, double that. That turns it into 160 damage. Sorry, 160 damage plus whatever you do with your stabby stab. So yes, that will one-shot a lot of guys. Vampires, I think that can actually one-shot them. So yeah, that would be pretty cool. You stab the vampire, turns into mist, and then somebody turns the lights on. You're golden. So anyway, that's the assassin. Again, the coolest parts of the class are the ones that min-maxers normally ignore. The fact that you can create multiple identities is massively cool. It's a really awesome thing. And then the imposter, the fact that you can mimic a real person and use that to get to places you normally shouldn't be able to with your disguise kit and everything. You are the ultimate scout character. You are the ultimate character that can get anywhere they want to. You can mimic anybody. You could become anybody. You can get anywhere you want to do what it is you do best, which is kill people. It's really cool. The final one is the Arcane Trickster. Arcane Tricksters are what are called half-casters. Half-casters are like paladins or eldritch knights, things like this. They never get above level 4 spell. I think this is actually, it's not technically a half-caster. I think this is technically considered a third caster. Because like paladins actually, I think, get up to level 5 spell slots, and they're considered half-casters. Whereas, or rangers as well, I think they get up to level 5. Eldritch Knights and Arcane Tricksters are archetype casters. So when you're figuring out your total caster level, they only count their levels only count a third, compared to half casters who count as half. It's mechanics. Anyways, Arcane Tricksters get spells. The big thing with them is all but, I think, 5 of the spells that they learn have to be illusion or enchantment, which fits in with the Arcane Trickster. They're designed to use their magic to enhance their ability to be a rogue. And again, rogues are built around that idea of they're really, really good at doing certain things. They're really crafty. They're really good at getting into certain places. The Arcane Trickster is specifically built to trick people. It is designed to befuddle the mind and just mess with people. And that's what enchantment and illusions do. So very, very useful. One thing that I have to say, and this is a pure min-maxer type thing. It really, really is. But it's so massively effective that I personally think it's broken. And my original ruling, because I had this come up at a table when the Sword Coast Adventures Guide first came out. I was running an Adventure League game, and somebody asked me about this, who was another DM, and he was very polite about it. He goes, I'm going to use this, and because I'm going to use this cantrip, and the cantrip requires me to make a weapon attack, does that mean I get sneak attack on it? And I said, to be perfectly honest, I can't do that because cantrips level up with your character level, and so that means that there's no reason a rogue wouldn't take the Magic Initiate feat or become an Arcane Trickster and take this cantrip. Because without using this cantrip, you are massively underpowered. So I technically ruled against it. Crawford actually said, no, this is how it's designed. So what that is as an Arcane Trickster, you learn 3 cantrips. You learn Mage Hand and 2 other cantrips of your choice from the Wizard spell list. You learn another Wizard cantrip at 10th level. Cantrips are unique. The damaging cantrips are interesting by the fact that as your character level grows, not your caster level, but your character level grows, they get more powerful. Something like Firebolt. Firebolt's a very simple spell. It's 1d10 damage. What it does is it does 1d10 damage between levels 1 through 4. At 5th level, you do 2d10. At 11th level, you do 3d10. At 17th level, you do 4d10. It was done, it's something that was taken from 4th edition because basic attacks and things like that leveled up as you got higher, so that none of your abilities were ever worthless at high levels. It's the same basic thing here. It means that cantrips are still useful at high levels, whereas in previous editions, cantrips were worthless after about level 3. Once you got access to real magic, cantrips didn't do anything. And even at the 1st and 2nd level, they did almost nothing. They were worthless. So the reason I keep mentioning cantrips so hard is there are 2 different cantrips that are insanely useful for a rogue in general. Every single rogue should take the Magic Initiate feat at some point because it complements the sneak attack ability so well that I can't not recommend this. Which I really hate. I don't like options that require you to take them because otherwise you will be massively underpowered compared to your peers that did take it. And that's the reason why I don't like this. But again, this is how it was designed. It's massively useful. So In the Sword Coast Adventures Guide, they released a thing called the Blade Singer. It's a wizard subclass, but it added a few spells to the wizard spell list. One of those spells, or two of those spells, were Green Flame Blade and Booming Blade, both of which are massively useful. At their level 1 incarnations, they're really not that useful. What they do is Green Flame Blade, when you hit them, you do damage, and then the target, one target within 5 feet, takes your intelligence modifier as fire damage. So you hit them, the blade explodes, hits another person. That's not that big a deal. Booming Blade is even more of a weird thing. You hit them with a weapon attack. If you hit them and they move, they will take, I believe it's a D8 of damage when they move on their turn. Where this becomes a big deal is when you get to level 5, Green Flame Blade doesn't just do your weapon damage. The initial attack does your weapon damage plus a D8 of fire damage at level 5. And then the additional damage to one target next to it is your intelligence modifier plus a D8. At level 11, it's your weapon damage plus 2d8. At level 7, it's your weapon damage plus 3d8. So as you can see, rogues only get one attack. But by using this, in order for them to get sneak attack, they have to make a weapon attack with a finesse weapon and have everything else in there. They have to have either an ally next to it, or they have to have advantage on the attack, something like that, in order to get sneak attack. So they can't get sneak attack on Firebolt or anything like that. Casting any other spell wouldn't get them. But if they do Green Flame Blade or Booming Blade, they do. And as they get higher levels, that means their basic attack, which is already getting souped up because their sneak attack damage keeps getting higher and higher and higher, they also just get extra damage from either Green Flame Blade or Booming Blade. Booming Blade is actually the same way. It's thunder damage instead of fire damage, but at level 5 you do your weapon attack plus 1d8 thunder damage. And then if the target moves on their turn willingly, they take an additional 2d8 damage or something like that. So it's Booming Blade. Booming Blade I see used a lot more. I like Green Flame Blade better because I like fire swords. But yeah, this is a massively, massively, massively useful thing if you become an Arcane Trickster. Despite the fact that you're going to be doing a bunch of other things I'm going to talk about here, take either Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade. Booming Blade is really useful for the Assassin and the Thief because... the Assassin specifically, because they don't have any other use for their bonus action, their cunning action, because they don't get extra things that you can do with your cunning action, unlike the other two archetypes. So Booming Blade is really good because what you'll do is you go in, you'll cast Booming Blade, you'll attack them, you'll get the sneak attack damage, and then you'll run away using the disengage action from your cunning action, and that person has to move to do something. They take additional damage. And then again, if you crit, you double all of the dice. You roll double the amount of dice you normally would. That includes the Green Flame or the Booming Blade dice. Not the ones that they get on their turn for just moving from Booming Blade, but your initial attack. So with either of those two cantrips, rogues become even more deadly, especially when they get critical hits. So that being said, I'm not going to go hardcore into the different spells. If I do, or when I do wizards, I will probably have to do an entire video that's just talking about magic and stuff like that. They use the wizard spell list. Enchantment and illusion spells, the ones that you're going to be using the most often are going to be invisibility and greater invisibility. Which I'm not sure if you get access to greater invisibility, because I can't remember if it's 4th or 5th level. But invisibility is still massively useful. And enchantment, things like Charm Person and stuff like that are going to be useful just for getting you out of sticky situations, and because they fit with the Arcane Trickster archetype. really, really well. Again, the Arcane Trickster is just that. They're a trickster. They're a Loki type character. They're going to be using things like illusions and misdirection, stuff like that, to really confuse the party and the bad guys and stuff like that. So going through what they actually get after magic, because again, magic is its own video. They get this thing called Mage Hand Ledgered Main? I don't know. It's Mage Hand. What it means is they can do things with their Mage Hand most people don't. First things, Mage Hand normally can do things like it can open a door, it can pick up an object, put down an object, but it's really limited in what it can do. It's not nearly as useful as a lot of people think. Arcane Tricksters get the full use out of their Mage Hands. You can now stow one object the hand is holding in a container worn or carried by another creature. You can retrieve an object in a container worn or carried by another creature. You can use thieves' tools to pick locks and disarm traps at range. Massively useful for things like arrow traps, where if you do it wrong, you trigger the trap. Well, the Mage Hand is there doing it for you. When the trap triggers, there's no one to get hit by the arrows or the poison gas or the poison darts or anything like that. So super useful there. You can perform one of these tasks without being noticed by a creature if you succeed on a dexterity sleight of hand check contested by the creature's wisdom perception check. In addition, you can use the bonus action granted by your cunning action to control the hand. This is a big part of the Arcane Trickster, is their Mage Hand. Mage Hand takes an action to cast, but sticks around. So casting it and then just keeping it with you, you get to move it on your turn. I think, I can't remember, I'd have to look it up again, but you can get it to move and do all these other things. But the big thing with this is that you can use your cunning action with your Mage Hand. And it makes it massively useful. You can pickpocket people from a long ways away. You can stow something from long distance and stuff like that. And you can, massively useful thing to do. It's still going to look a little bit weird to watch a key floating away because the Mage Hand is invisible. But that's what the sleight of hand check is and everything like that. And it's, again, it makes you a long range thief. It's super cool. So that's really kind of the defining feature, other than magic in general. The Arcane Tricksters, that Mage Hand, they're using it a lot. And their cunning action is super, super useful for doing so many things at range. Magical Ambush. Starting at 9th level, if you're hidden from a creature when you cast a spell on it, the creature is disadvantaged on any saving throw it makes against the spell this turn. That is something that a lot of wizards I've seen, and spellcasters in general, have tried to argue that, well, I'm hidden from them. They didn't see me cast the spell, so they should have disadvantage. No, they don't. Because a fireball is a fireball is a fireball. When you see an explosion, you're going to have the same reaction to it. Now, there are certain things that, like evasion, that require you to be able to see who's casting the spell. You have to see the thing of danger for you to be able to get out of it scot-free. That won't count. But no, they don't get disadvantage unless you're an Arcane Trickster. And that's one of the reasons I make that ruling, because Arcane Trickster, that is their 9th level ability. And that's a big deal. Especially when you're using enchantment and illusion magic. If you're using illusion magic to kind of trick them into thinking something's there that's not, or tricking them into thinking that something's not there when it is, the fact that they get disadvantage on the roll is a huge bonus to you, and it ensures that, what you want to happen is going to happen. 13th level is massively useful because it basically means you no longer need allies or anyone or even your hide action to be able to get your sneak attack. What it is you gain the ability to distract targets with your Mage Hand. As a bonus action on your turn, you can designate a creature within 5 feet of the spectral hand created by the spell. Doing so gives you advantage on attack rolls against the creature until the end of the turn. You get to create your own advantage. This is the only rogue that can have advantage on every single one of their attacks. Because all they do is they park their mage hand next to the bad guy, and then every turn they use their bonus action to get advantage, and then shoot them or stab them, however you want to do it. Arcane Tricksters are really great ranged rogues. Like you can be I call them a shooty rogue or a stabby rogue. Assassins and thieves can go either way. Arcane Tricksters excel at being ranged rogues. They really do. With the fact that their mage hand lets them do all the roguey type stuff without being anywhere near it, they're great to use a short bow or a hand crossbow, or even a long bow, you know, however you want to build them. They're great for doing things like that. And this just kind of adds to that. You can be, 30 feet away and you have your mage hand just parked there, and your bonus action, you get the mage hand to distract the guy by tickling him, and you get advantage, and any time you have advantage, you get sneak attack. So massively useful for the Arcane Trickster. And again, you can use that in other ways as well. Again, because you have magic, you can blend it with a bunch of other things to make a very creative, interesting character. And then the final thing you get, and this is the most useful ability you're going to find as an Arcane Trickster, because it's just massively cool. It's called Spell Thief. It's a level 17 ability. But what it is, you gain the ability to magically steal the knowledge of how to cast a spell from another spellcaster. Now, if that seems a little overpowered, it is, but it isn't. But it is massively useful, and it is a defining Arcane Trickster thing. What it is immediately after a creature casts a spell that targets you or includes you in its area of effect, you can use your reaction to force the creature to make a saving throw with its spellcasting ability modifier. The DC equals your spell save DC, so it's intelligence. So Arcane Tricksters, you need a high intelligence. On a failed save, you negate the spell's effect on you, and you steal the knowledge of the spell if it is at least first level and of a level you can cast. It doesn't need to be a wizard spell. For the next 8 hours, you know the spell and can cast it using your spell slots. The creature can't cast that spell until the 8 hours have passed. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. So you can only do this once per long rest. But this is your mage killer. It really is. What that means, and I think the most effective use of this is a spell that a lot of DMs hate until they start using it on their players, and then players hate it. And that spell is Counterspell. It is a massively useful spell in 5th edition, and you just have to watch... really, you just have to watch quite a few episodes of Critical Role, because one of the characters, I'm not going to reveal who, gets Counterspell as one of their spells, and they use it over and over again throughout the campaign. And it's never a bad move. It if you fail, you've wasted a spell slot, but if you succeed, you have severely limited the spellcaster's ability. This is even crazier. This is the ultimate version of Counterspell. What it is they cast a spell that you don't want them to cast. You can take that spell away from them. And in general, because you can only cast up to level 4 spells, this is not something you in general want to use on a on like a meteor storm or something like that, because all it's going to do is protect you from it, nobody else. You're not going to be able to cast that spell because you can only cast up to level 4. You still get the other effects. It negates its ability, its effect against you, so it could save your life, but you're not going to get most of the things. The most effective use of this is you have a caster in the party, they cast a spell at the bad guy, and the bad guy simply counterspells it. And then Spell Thief happens. Now, it does need to target you, so generally, a great way to get a counterspell, like you're basically begging a counterspell. The best way to do this, enchantment magic, is to use one of the things that affects their mentality, or just something that they don't want being cast on them to get them to counterspell you. Mass illusions or, you know, other things that have to look at the spell list, but just trick them into counterspelling you, steal counterspell from them. That means for 8 hours, they cannot cast counterspell. So your mages can cast any spell they want at them, and they never have to worry about that caster ever casting counterspell. And you now have access to counterspell for 8 hours. It's really useful. It's really interesting. And again, technically, you can use this on any spell. All the way up to 4th level, you get access to that spell for 8 hours. And the big deal about it is it limits their ability to cast a spell. So high-level spells, you generally don't have to worry about as much for using this because they're only going to get 1, maybe 2 castings of it. But for lower-level spells where they can cast it at higher levels, taking away something like Finger of Death, or taking away something, even like low-level spells that when you cast them at high levels do crazy high damage, like Fireball or Firestorm and stuff like that, Wall of Fire, just whatever spell seems the most useful to them, take it away from them. Don't let them have the ability to cast it anymore for a full 8 hours. Combat, a round of combat is 6 seconds. You're never going to have combat that lasts 8 hours. Oh man, that would be combat that would last literally days of playing, like never sleeping days. So yeah, that's the coolest aspect of this is you can just steal a spell from an enemy spellcaster. It's massively useful, and again, the ability to cast it back at them is kind of cool. But the best thing about it is it negates its effect on you, and it prevents them from casting that spell for 8 hours. So if you take away a big spell, you can cast. So yeah, like I said, the max level you can do this at is 4th level, because it has to be of at least 1st level and a level you can cast. It's between 1st and 4th level, so you actually can't do it on like, you know, Meteor Storm or anything like that. But again, you pick the right spell, and you have deprived them of the ability to cast that spell for the rest of combat. And especially if it's something like you're facing a healer, and they use Cure Wounds or something. And again, it has to target you, doesn't it? It targets you or includes you in its area effect. Yeah. So anyway, Fireball is a real popular one for this. Yeah. It's not quite as useful as my first reading thought, but it's still something really powerful. If it wasn't for that little caveat of it has to be a level that you can cast, because again, Arcane Tricksters only get up to 4th level, it would be a slightly more useful ability, but even without that, it's still an incredibly useful ability. And again, just because they cast it at a higher level doesn't mean the level of the spell changes. It's just they're casting it at a higher level. So again, if you can trick them into counterspelling you, you've sealed counterspell on them, or a lot of other spells. So anyway, I've been talking for much longer than I wanted to, but that is the PHB Rogues. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Like I said, I think the Rogue is a really, really interesting class. The archetypes themselves are really, really interesting, but again, because it's the min-maxer's class of choice, it has a bit of a reputation behind it, and because everybody puts so much emphasis on the sneak attack, because it's a big part of it, they tend to ignore things like Thieves' Cant, or they ignore the thief archetype altogether, because they just don't look at some of the really cool things that it can do. So I hope this gives you a little bit better idea about how the archetypes are created, how they, were intended to be made, a little bit of lore behind them, and how you can play them a little bit more effectively. Anyway, that's all for me today, and I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye.